today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Veteran boxing scribe Gareth Davies chimed in on the ongoing controversy at these Olympics, saying there is an argument that Khalif will leave the Olympics as one of boxing's hottest properties because if she enters into the pro game, then everyone is going to know who she is. Might be true, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to be supportive just because they know who she is and know what's going on. Khalif very briefly went pro late last year and competed in the welterweight category where the fighter won their first professional boxing match. So when you think about the potentiality after these Olympics are over that the fighter might go pro in that same category in order to fight on the same stages as, say, Ivana Habazin, the WBC champion, Lauren Price, the WBA champion, Sandy Ryan, the WBO champion, or Natasha Jonas, who holds the IBF. Now, we already talked about the differences in infrastructure and governance between what you see in the amateurs and what you're seeing in the Olympics and how the pros work. They're different animals, they're different beasts, and the level of cooperation required to get Imaine Khalif and Lin Yu-Ting boxing on the same stages as those aforementioned fighters, those aforementioned champions, you have to ask yourself, even if you can get a commission to play ball, give you a boxing license, who's going to promote you? Put the money up to make your fights because somebody's going to have to pay people to fight you. Money moves everything in professional boxing. And if there is no money behind you and no money to incentivize a fight with you for the other women boxers, you ain't going to get no fights, no important ones. So behind the guise of human rights, these two fighters have been allowed to compete in this category as people question whether or not they should be there, even if you get a boxing license in the pros, even if you can. Behind the guise of human rights. The other women in the category, the other fighters, can reserve the right not to fight them because they're not obligated to do that. You can't make them. As I stated, who's going to pay them? Because somebody has to. So in the last 7 or 8 years, the rise of women's boxing has seen the sport grow in popularity. But make no mistake, there's still more work needs doing. Because not every promotional outfit has a robust stable of women boxers. Top Rank only has 1 or 2, so does Golden Boy. Perhaps a few, but not that many. The PBC has none. They don't promote any women. Gareth Davies is saying that because everybody knows Imaine Khalif, from the amateurs into the pros, there may be a bidding war to sign the fighter? I don't know about that. Because do you think that those aforementioned promotional outfits are going to be climbing over each other to sign this fighter on the premise of what? Money? That they can make money or make people mad? Piss people off. Just because the IOC is willing to keep their secret doesn't mean that the spectators in this sport will. Doesn't mean they're going to play along. Yeah, the audience in boxing may be way less understanding. Who's going to sign this fighter? These fighters. What, Matchroom? Looking at the controversy their continued participation stirred in these Olympic Games, do you think Matchroom sees a financial opportunity? It's just a question, a legitimate one, because I don't know. What I see here is a hot potato, hot enough that some people might not want to touch it. Imaine Khalif of Algeria. Algeria is not one of the predominant boxing markets in the sport of boxing. In men's boxing, women's boxing is hard enough to sell as it is for those who are selling it. Without a confused audience that doesn't even know if they're looking at a woman. Spark even more outrage if you're promoting a fight with a fighter that looks like a biological male punching up biological females. The audience that spends money to see boxing matches in America, in the UK, and these other boxing markets that are out there, how do you think this would go over with them? You think they want to watch this? The lifeblood of pro boxing is the money that the audience is willing to spend to see boxing. Do you think people want to see this? You can be as idealistic as you want online, inclusive, where everything is free, and you're free to say and free to think whatever you like. But in the world of boxing, pro boxing, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. Sorry. I wonder which, if any, promotional outfit would be willing to poke the bear just to promote these two controversial athletes. And how many of the bleeding hearts online would continue to follow these fighters and spend money to watch them develop in their pro career? Yeah, you're so supportive on Twitter. So inclusive, but in the real world, actual patronage, actual money. is required. Are you about to put it up? Are you about to spend it?
Are you?
What I equate to little more than virtue signaling and keyboard activism. In the pros, it'll take more than that to get the wheels in motion.
Their career's off the ground.
Now, maybe if somebody in the main Caliph's native Algeria is willing to put the money up for that boxer to have a boxing career moving forward in the pros, the Algerians have become quite defensive throughout all of this at the prospect of having their first Olympic gold medalist.
Let somebody over there put the money up, and that can be the fighter's core audience that they fight in front of.
But like I said, Algeria isn't exactly one of the big boxing markets in the sport of boxing. Men's boxing, women's boxing, you're still gonna need cooperation from the alphabets. Are you gonna get it?
Is Mauricio Suleiman gonna go for this? Paco Veracel, Daryl Peebles.
Gilberto Mendoza, are they gonna be parties to this?
Are the fighters? Are the promoters?
Behind the guise of human rights. It was your right to compete in the Olympics, but it's not your right to be promoted by the major promoters in the sport. They can reserve the right not to promote you because you're too controversial.
Maybe they don't want to roll the dice with you.
It's a powder keg waiting to explode for them. The outrage it might cause, if they try to, for what financial gains?
What's in it for them?
The very most, if the Algerians support Iman Khalif, well, Algeria is not one of the major markets in the sport of boxing. A lot of fighters don't even come out of that region. A lot of fights don't even happen in that region. Goes back to what I said in my previous video. The level of cooperation required in pro boxing to get these two controversial boxers' pro careers off the ground may be more than they can get.
And don't forget that the majority of boxing fans are predominantly male.
It's mostly guys. Mostly. Just putting your own thinking cap on, how many guys do you think want to watch this?
How many guys that spend money on boxing, pay a ticket to be there or to see it at home? How many of them do you think want to see this?
I've long been a supporter of the women's game, but I'm not a supporter of blurring the line that makes the distinction between the women and the men.
Nope.
The risk of serious and permanent injury is already there without you amplifying it for no other reason than your own idealism.
Sorry.
Oh, hello again. Guess what time it is? Time for your new favorite 5 minutes of the week, Clapback Thursdays. This actually might be my favorite one so far. So it turns out I'm not the only one who thinks Canelo is an arrogant piece of shit. Turki Al-Sheikh recently revealed that Canelo refused to meet with him in person and isn't entertaining any deals to be done with him. Why? Because he's outpriced himself so much that the Saudis don't even want to deal with him. And it's all because he will do anything not to fight David Benavidez. Look, Turkey is trying to make the best fights that everybody wants to see. And Canelo continues to take the fights that nobody wants to see. That takes me to Edgar Berlanga, who is fighting Canelo on September 14. Now he claims he has a whole country behind him. Edgar, bro, you're from Brooklyn. I think I'm more Puerto Rican than you are, and I only lived there for 6 years. Puerto Rico doesn't claim you, bro. And as I said weeks ago, this fight will not do well on September 14. Not only because the matchup is okay, but because they're going up against the UFC's debut at the Sphere in Las Vegas. Now that's a spectacle that everyone and their mother has been waiting to see since it opened up about a year ago. And who is funding it and making it all happen? Turki Al-Sheikh. Canelo, you're really making the wrong enemies. But you know what? You.
Oscar De La Hoya, in another one of his Clapback Thursday segments via his social media, aired it out as far as Canelo and Turki Al-Sheikh, the rift between them, the upcoming Edgar Berlanga fight, and now he's being called out by none other than Edgar Berlanga, who says, "Get off my dick, Oscar De La Hoya. You were dying to sign me last year and flew in to sit down with me and again was on my dick. I'ma have a bag of coke for your bitch ass."
Well, he's not lying.
When Edgar Berlanga achieved free agency and left Top Rank, in that span of time when he was a network and promotional free agent, fielding offers from Oscar, fielding Oscars from Eddie,
We know who he went with. He went with Eddie Hearn. He went with Matchroom.
yet another fighter besides Canelo Alvarez that chose Eddie over Oscar. So how do you now turn around and try to criticize a fight between Canelo and a fighter that you were trying to sign? You were trying to sign Edgar not that long ago. People didn't forget. It's brazen opportunism.
Oh, now you want to trash Edgar Berlanga, and now you want to trash his fight?
God only knows that if he would have went with you instead of Matchroom, you would have been trying to sell this Canelo Alvarez fight the same way you tried to sell the Jaime Munguia fight, because you're a flim-flam artist, a hypocrite, and an opportunist, taking every opportunity to bring up Canelo Alvarez and talk about him and what he's doing. 4 years after he left your promotional outfit, you don't want to let it go.
Edgar Berlanga fight is still shit, though.
I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that if Edgar would have signed a Golden Boy instead of Matchroom, Oscar wouldn't be singing this tune. And everybody knows it.
So what he says about the fight, you can't really take it seriously.
You can't really take Oscar seriously. Wasn't it Oscar de la Hoya that said he wasn't going to allow some foreigner to come into America and try to horn in on his market, only so that he could welcome Turkey al-Sheikh with open arms?
He wants to get down. He wants to be part of the club.
He's still wishy-washy. Even if you don't like the Edgar Berlanga fight, even if you would prefer to see Canelo fighting David Benavidez, as I would, you still can't take Oscar at his word. You can't take him seriously when it comes to anything involving Canelo. So what if the UFC is holding an event that same day?
So what if Turkey's paying for it?
UFC fans, MMA fans, and boxing fans are completely different demos. Those are different demographics. One can't cannibalize the other.
We're talking about your average boxing fan that pays money for boxing. It's not hard for them to decide what they're going to watch on that day.
I can use myself as an example. As much as I don't like the Edgar Berlanga fight, there's next to no chance I spend any of my money on the UFC show, no matter how bad I think the boxing match is.
How bad I think the card is.
The only combat sport that's going to get my money on that Mexican holiday is going to be boxing. It's boxing or nothing.
And I'm pretty sure the MMA fans are of a similar mindset.
Oscar's just trying to pile on because he knows that there are a lot of people criticizing Canelo right now, and he knows that he's not getting along with Turkey al-Sheikh, so he wants to throw a kick in.
But he wasn't being completely honest about what transpired between Turkey and Canelo. According to Canelo, he said they were pressuring him for an answer.
They wanted to go into negotiations for another fight after the Berlanga fight, and Canelo was unwilling to do that because he wants to focus on Edgar, as he should. You never take your eyes off the ball. You never want to be asleep at the wheel.
He's focusing on the man in front of him, as he should. So the question is
it not so much what Turkey asked, but how he asked Canelo? And is it too much to ask to wait until after the Berlanga fight to get something going? Is that too much to ask?
$200 million is.
What is damning, and does make for very bad optics, is that the dollar amount Canelo Alvarez is openly asking for is exorbitant.
It's a lot.
But Oscar is still in no position to talk because the more you bring up Canelo, the more obvious you make it that you're still mad. You're still being a sourpuss. 4 years after this guy left you, you can't let it go.
You're like a jilted ex.
You can't move on. What you're really angry about isn't that Canelo isn't fighting David or that he's fighting Edgar. That's not what you're mad about. At the heart of it, that's not what this is about for you. What this is about is that Canelo left you.
It's not that he's arrogant. It's not that him and Turkey aren't getting along. It's that Canelo left you.
Underneath it all, that's what it's all about. And it's very obvious. And just a segue to what Turkey al-Sheikh is working on now, since he's not working with Canelo, Eddie Hearn has confirmed to me that he's been in talks with Frank Warren about a rematch of the Queensberry versus Matchroom 5 vs 5 event, and said he hopes news will be announced regarding this in the next month or so. I thoroughly enjoyed the first one. Every single fight was entertaining on the Matchroom vs. Queensberry show, and what that brings to light most of all, at least for me, is that what's on the calendar, what is happening in boxing, as opposed to what isn't.
Canelo versus Benavidez isn't happening.
But Joshua versus Dubois is a Riyadh season show. Beterbiev versus Bivol, Fury versus Usyk 2, and of course, Matchroom versus Queensberry 2. That while Turkey al-Sheikh may have made an enemy or enemies out of Canelo and Canelo Alvarez's fans, that doesn't change that, at least for me, the most exciting cards that are happening in boxing right now are still Riyadh season cards.
Sorry, but that's the truth.
You can respect that Canelo Alvarez is a maverick, and he's his own man, he marches to the beat of his own drum. You can respect him for that, but none of that makes the Berlanga fight appealing, attractive, exciting. There's absolutely nothing on that show
Nada.
I'm interested in seeing. Whereas what is on the calendar and what will be, it is coming to us by way of Turkey al-Sheikh. So where many a Canelo Alvarez fan has decided they don't like Turkey anymore.
Awesome.
But I still do, and I still love what he's doing because it's about more than just Canelo Alvarez. It's about the sport of boxing, the entire sport of boxing, and I've said this before. I'll say it here again. You should never get the like in anybody in boxing so much. You're going to defend whatever they do for no other reason than they're the one doing it. No, you shouldn't be a fan of a man more than a fan of a sport. That kind of fanaticism.
For how many years did we see the Errol Spence Jr. fans behave this way? Or the Deontay Wilder fans behave this way? I wonder, do the Canelo fans think they appear different?
Do you think you're somehow different than the fanatics and fanboys that were fanboying over those fighters?
Glazing those fighters?
Because this is not an either-or situation to where either you support Canelo or you support Turkey. You can support them both, but the reactions that I've been seeing the last 3 days, oh, now all of a sudden these guys hate Turkey, and they don't care what he's doing, and they don't care about the rest of boxing. All they care about is Canelo.
What about him?
I'm a big fan of Canelo too. I buy all his fights, but I gotta be honest, this Berlanga fight, I'm not interested. I'm more interested in Joshua versus Dubois. I'm more interested in Beterbiev versus Bivol, Fury versus Usyk 2, Matchroom versus Queensberry 2.
There's nothing Canelo Alvarez has coming up that I'm interested in. Not the Berlanga fight, not the potential exhibition in Japan.
Nothing. So if he's at a stage in his career where he's not gonna fight in intriguing matchups anymore,
Whether he earned it or not.
I'm not gonna trash Turkey in favor of him. I'm sorry. All Turkey's really trying to do is make good fights. Competitive fights. That's it.
That's all.
Fights that boxing couldn't and wouldn't make on its own. Bridging that gap to continue to bring competitive fight after competitive fight, big show after big show in succession with little wait time in between. And you're complaining?
What, you're that loyal to Canelo, you're gonna pretend that the Berlanga fight is a good fight?
I'm not one that often stands apart from the Canelo Alvarez fan base because I'm a Canelo fan myself, but at the same time, I'm a boxing fan first, and I ain't gonna pour sugar on shit.
I don't like anybody that much.
I don't. At the end of the day, I'm here to see fights. Good ones. And if you're gonna charge me pay-per-view prices for what you're doing, it better be good. Berlanga ain't it.
I'm just hoping they could work something out after that fight.
I am. That they can make amends. Turkey al-Sheikh and Canelo Alvarez, and maybe get something going.
Because what Canelo's got going right now, it ain't good.